Good morning. Today we are starting chapter 4, the early Ojibwe. So we're going to be learning, just like last chapter with the Dakota, we're going to learn some of the important things to the Ojibwe. We're going to learn some of the Ojibwe language. And we're going to learn about what has been going on with the Ojibwe and how things have changed over time. So we're going to start with the wigwam. Some people in my last hour knew what a wigwam was. Does anybody in here have an idea of what a wigwam is without having looked at the book yet? Has anybody heard of a wigwam before? Tristan?
I think it's a type of house.
It is a type of house. We know that the Dakota lived in the teepee, that cone-shaped house. The Ojibwe lived in a wigwam, which is a round dwelling made out of poles and saplings. Now, a sapling is a type of tree that hasn't grown up yet. So it's when you go out hiking in the woods, and you got those small little trees that are easy to bend, and you can kind of push them out of your way. Those are saplings. They're bendable. So if it's round, poles can't be round, right? Poles are straight and they're strong. So they use the saplings to be able to bend them to make it round. And I shouldn't have put a period here. So they use the poles and the saplings and covered with sheets of birch bark. Or woven mats. So think about the Dakota, when they made their teepees, they had the poles that they covered with the animal skin. And that's what protected them from the outside elements. The Ojibwe used those poles and saplings. Instead of making that cone shape, it's more of a dome shape. It's a rounded dome shape, and they cover it with sheets of birch bark or woven mats. We'll find out if it's as portable as the teepees were. Teepees, we knew that they could take up and down really quick and easy, so they could follow the buffalo. We're going to see if they did the same thing with wigwams, or if they were more of a permanent structure. So the wigwams are covered in birch bark. What is birch bark? In Ojibwe, it's wigwas. What is that? Katie?
It might just be the bark off of a birch tree.
Yeah, it is that simple. It is the bark off of the birch tree. So we call it the bark or outer covering. Of the birch tree. Sometimes when you go out in the woods and you see lots of trees, you can see lots of different types of leaves, so you know they're different types of trees, but you might not always be sure which tree is which type. What makes the birch bark so easy to identify? Why is it when you walk in the woods you can always tell what the birch trees are? Caitlin?
It's like usually a white with like kind of like some black spots.
Yeah, it's white with little black specks throughout it. And it peels off really easy off of the tree. Sometimes you'll see it starting to crack off of the tree trunk. We used to have birch trees in our yard, and we would have like the actual birch bark would fall off. And I thought, well, no wonder that's what they use to cover up their homes, because it's easy to be able to peel it off of the trees. It makes sense that that's what they would use. Will?
It's also really flammable.
Is it really flammable?
Yeah.
Most wood is. And it's dry. It's peeling off of the trunk of the tree as it's drying out. So when anything is super dry, it's very flammable. So if it still has like the sap in it, if it still has the water in it, it's not going to be as flammable. It'll be harder. You don't want to try to light wet wood. You want it to be dried out. So that birch bark, you're right, it's all dried out because it's taken off of the tree. Maddie.
Our trees in by our house, and one time I took some of that off it, and I wrote on
Yeah, people used to use it like paper, and they would write on it. So that's what they used to do back before they had actual paper.
It's like the white.
Okay, we need to keep on moving. So migration. Has anybody heard of migration before? Eyes up here so I see whose hand that is. Nick.
Immigration is like the process of
No, don't read to me from the book. What do you know about migration? When have you heard migration from? When have you heard it in your life? When do we hear about migration? Every fall. People are talking about migration. Jocelyn?
I think of like the birds.
The birds. Okay, we hear about the birds migrating every fall. They're going from the cold north down to the warm south. Okay, so migration we hear all the time with birds. Butterflies migrate. You hear about the monarch butterflies and the wonderful, beautiful forests down in Mexico that are just covered with monarch butterflies. They start out up here. I know a lot of people that grow, like they collect the little monarch caterpillars and then they watch them make their chrysalises and emerge and they migrate down to Mexico. Migration is not just for animals going from warm or from the cold down to the warm. It's not for the people that migrate from the north down to the south in the winter months. Sometimes you might know people, neighbors, grandparents who have houses down in Florida or Arizona that they go to for the cold winter months. That's called migrating. Migrating comes from this. It's the process of moving from one region or country to another. Mr. Gambino's dad grew up in Italy, the country of Italy. He migrated to France when he was a teenager. Then he migrated to Canada for a couple of years and then migrated down to Chicago. So he migrated several times, going where there were jobs and where he had people that he knew, where he had family. So migration could be going from country to country, from region to region. Thinking about what we know about the Dakota, how do you think this might relate to the Ojibwe? Leah? Why might they be migrating? Maddie?
Well, they might be migrating because maybe there's more food in them.
Yeah, think about the Dakota. They would follow the buffalo. So they would move to where the animals were moving to because they needed their food. So maybe that's one of the reasons why the Ojibwe might be migrating. Because I'm assuming the Ojibwe migrate, otherwise it wouldn't be a key term for our chapter. What do you think, Izzy?
They might have with the climate.
Okay, maybe the climate. Minnesota doesn't have a whole lot of change. I mean, up north it gets a little bit colder and snowier, but we still have cold and snow down southern Minnesota. But maybe. One last one, Leah. Yeah, they could migrate to where the different resources are. Maybe there's moving water or something that they need. So we're going to find out as we read our chapter what migration has to do with the Ojibwe. Wild rice. Manumid. So a lot of us that were here last year think it was last year, my last hour said you guys learned about the wild rice.
Yeah.
You watched a video on it. So we're gonna learn about why the wild rice is important to the Ojibwe. So the wild rice is a tall grass that grows in shallow, still waters. The edible grain that comes from this plant is important in Ojibwe culture. We're going to learn why. Why is that plant important? Okay. Any guesses? Will? Maybe they have to live off it to survive. That's one of their crops that they're able to grow. Katie?
I know that some of the Native Americans have different traditions that have to do with things like feathers. So that might be with wild rice too.
Okay, maybe they have a tradition centered around it. Izzy?
They might have made and used it for a lot of things that it might have been the most available crop.
Maybe it's a more available crop. The conditions are right. The environment is right to grow that. Has anybody been to northern Minnesota and gotten like wild rice soup? It's pretty popular up north. Yeah, I've had wild rice soup up north. I've seen it being sold at the shops. They're able to grow that wild rice because the conditions are right up north. Katie?
I know we had wild rice often instead of white rice.
Yes. It's I'd say prevalent. It's readily available here in Minnesota. So a lot of people do eat the wild rice a lot. Next is corn. Oh, no, sorry. Next is maple sugar. In Ojibwe, it's Zinzabakwad. So it's a long name. But remember, even though it sounds different to us, it's not a silly Dr. Seuss word. It's a real language. It's a real word. So we're going to be respectful of the Ojibwe language. And even though it sounds different, we need to be mindful and respectful. So the maple sugar is Zinzibakwad, which, like I said, I know sounds different, but thank you for being respectful about it. So maple sugar. Anybody know where maple sugar would come from? Tristan?
A maple tree.
A maple tree. So do you just cut open the maple tree and there's maple sugar right there? Nick?
You have to like tap into the tree.
You have to tap the tree, and what comes out of the tap? It kind of comes running out. It's the sap. So the maple sap comes out of the tree. Well, how do we get sugar from sap? Will? Maddie? How?
Well, you do it.
You heat it up. You have to boil it. You have to boil the sap, and it boils down and it crystallizes, and you get that maple sugar. It's a kind of like a hard candy.
It's hard, and then you have to like grind it.
Yep. Yep. So my class read a book last year called The Birch Bark House about the Ojibwe, and they actually made maple sugar, and it was like little rock candy. They kept some as a special treat to have in the wintertime when it was super cold and they had nothing because they have barely any food and they have to eat the same food over and over. So they would have little treats that they saved from the summertime when they made some of their maple sugar, and that would be something to help them make the days better in the cold of the winter months. Caitlin?
Usually during the winter time, we go to our grandparents' cabin,
Uh-huh.
and we usually collect a lot of the sap of it, and we make a lot of syrup.
So you actually you tap the trees.
Well, they already do it. We go and collect all of it though.
Cool.
All us kids.
Has anybody else tapped maple trees to make syrup? That's very cool. I've never done it. I have friends that have done it. How fun. What a neat experience. So maple sugar is a sweet substance made by boiling sap from a maple tree. So it's the sweet substance made by boiling sap from a maple tree. Tristan?
I've actually tapped a tree on my own before. I just had to learn the basics of it, and then I got all the tools I needed, and actually did
Very
it all
cool. So you know exactly how to do it. Do you too, Katie?
Well, my uncle and a couple of his friends have a bunch of maple trees on their property that they all tap and make maple syrup, and I've seen them in the big thing making maple syrup.
Very cool. So it's always fun when either yourself or your family or people you know can do something like this. This is something that the Ojibwe lived off of, like maple candy, maple sugar. That was important to their lifestyle. Okay, it was one of the things that was readily available to them. If we talked about the wild rice, the conditions were right. There's a lot of maple trees, especially in northern Minnesota. So that's something that they were able to use. So they used their environment and what they could grow. Another thing that they could grow is corn. In Ojibwe, it's mandamin. So corn, we all are going, well, I know what corn is. Why would I need to write anything down about corn? I've seen cornfields all over the place. I eat corn on the cob. I know corn. But what we need to know about the corn, it is the most important crop grown by the Ojibwe in the summer. So we learned about the wild rice, we learned about maple sugar, and now there's corn. So there's lots of food that they grew themselves. I'm guessing, since it's a key term, and it's the definition they put with the key term, that it's very important for us to know that corn was the most important crop. So we're learning about several different foods. We need to remember the most important one was corn. We're going to find out why the corn was so important to them. My first guess is I know Minnesota has lots of cornfields. I see more cornfields than I see wild rice paddies. So I'm guessing my first guess, educated guess, would be that corn is so important because they could grow a lot of it. And you can take the corn off of the husks and you can save it. And so they can eat it in the wintertime because it's not going to go bad. So it's something that's easy for them to save to eat in the cold winter months. So they will have food available to them. So they might not be able to find the deer that are like hiding in the wintertime. They're laying low. The buffalo have moved on. They might have to rely on that saved up corn. That's my first guess. Maddie.
Is it different type of corn, like the, you have like
There are
corn
lots of
that
different
grow-
types of corn, just like there's lots of different types of apples.
Okay.
So I'm guessing it's just whatever corn they have. Like they didn't look at, well, we're going to grow this kind of corn on this field and that kind on that field. So I don't think it really matters the name of the corn, just that it was corn.
I was saying, is it different type of corn, like the dry corn and the kind of still,
Well, you have to grow the corn on the stalks first.
yeah.
Right? And then they can eat the corn on the cob. That only lasts for so long. They have to take the corn off of the cob to save it for the winter time.
Oh, okay, that's what I was.
Yep. So you have to take the corn off the cob to be able to save it for winter. Briggs.
Yeah, we grow corn since we have a farm, and like we grow many types. Like there's some like weird names like XD something stuff, and there's like Indian corn, which is very colorful and it's really cool.
Yeah, so there are a wide variety of corn that you can grow. And I've seen the Indian corn, and it is very colorful. A lot of people like to decorate with it in the fall to have all those fall colors. All right, alliance. How many of us have ever been in an alliance with somebody else? I have. Have any of you ever been in an alliance? When do you go into alliances with people, Sam?
I was playing Minecraft and there were like these different tribes kind of
Mm-hmm.
was on the server and I made an alliance with one tribe.
Yeah, so a lot of times in today's world, just playing games, you form alliances with other people. What does it mean when you're in an alliance with somebody, Kira?
A good example is there's someone in a game. You can't kill them because they're too hard to kill because they're too skilled. There's another, yours also skilled, but they seem to be better than you. So you find the other most skilled player that's not the player you're trying to kill and form a team with them. And you go and accomplish the thing and then proceed to break the alliance.
So sometimes you form an alliance with somebody because they have better skills than you have. What would be another reason you would form an alliance with somebody, Nick?
It's to like if you're not doing so good, the other person's doing so good, you can team up to try to do something like that.
Yeah, you can team up with them. They help cover your weaknesses or their strengths. And your strengths might be their weaknesses. So you match up and you become a formidable pairing. You become pretty mighty. So you watch out for each other. You take care of one another. That alliance means I'm not going to attack you. You're not going to attack me. We're going to work together to attack other people or to protect ourselves from other people that are attacking us. So the alliance, the technical definition for the alliance is an agreement made between two or more nations or allies to cooperate for specific reasons. So it started off with countries or the different nations. I'm going to match up with you so we don't go to war against each other. We fight together against a different country at war. Okay, so it started off big globally. It has gotten down into our everyday life. We use this term that started off big. So if we think about World War I, World War II, who were allies, who fought together. Okay, those are the allies. They had alliances. Countries have made alliances with one another for thousands of years. Okay, don't attack me, we won't attack you. Now we are going to see how that relates to Ojibwe. We know that they are the different Indian nations that were in Minnesota. Molly was talking about how the Ojibwe and the Cree had an alliance. They were allies. So we are going to see who the allies were with the Ojibwe and who they fought against. Sovereign. Sovereign means you are self-ruling and independent. When America first became the United States of America, they ruled over, it became our ruling government for our country. But the Indian nations are self-ruling and independent. They are sovereign. So they are not ruled by the government. The President of the United States doesn't go on to the Indian land and tell them what they have to do. They are a separate nation. We're going to learn about what that means and how that actually works. But there's different rules and laws for the sovereign nations. I'm going to sign off there for my friends at home. I hope to see you soon. Have a good day.